Let me ask you a question. Do you feel like you have a really hard time defining your decorating style? Because if you do, you might be missing this one thing. Now I'm Sarah, welcome to Grace in My Space. This is Willow. She might be joining us every now and then because with a new puppy, there is no freedom. There's no freedom in life. You basically serve this one. It's a good thing you're so stinking cute. Today, I want to help you figure out that missing element of your decorating style, and I think that it's antiques. If you struggle to bring antiques into a modern home, and you struggle with decorating styles, and you struggle with defining what you actually like, then this video is for you. So why do I think that antiques might solve your problem? That's because antiques equals character and quality. And one of the things that a lot of modern homes lack is that sense of personality or the quality pieces, because yes, there is certainly still quality items being made today, but if you look at the vast majority of products and consumption, it's very mass produced, it's very quick turnaround, and there's not a whole lot of handmade items just out there for society to make on hand. And, you know, we're kind of the society now that doesn't like to wait for things. So most of our homes, our modern homes, are being filled with quick turn products. And what I've seen in the industry is a return to personality, charm, quality, handmade items, because society just kind of figured it out. It's lacking, and it was important for our homes. One of the biggest indicators of this switch back to a more storied look, a historical look, is when big box stores start mass producing replicas of something that might have looked handmade or antique. And so when these big box stores start coming out with products that look handmade or that look old and are replicating antiques, you know, there's something to be said for bringing an antique into your home. That's the real thing. Does that mean that I will not go out and buy a replica? No. This was very affordable. It's very cute. It also sold out like within the first 5 minutes. So I don't know, maybe it's back in stock. I'll look. If it is, I'll link it up for you because I really do like it. Actually came in like this huge version too, which I was in love with, but also didn't have any place to put in my home. So anywho, we'll talk more about stuff like this in a minute. So today I want to give you several ways that you can make your home feel more character-filled, more lived in, more storied and charming without making it look like a museum. Not because I'm not like a gatekeeper and because I want to get to the point as fast as possible and then give you details, I'm going to tell you the number one thing that you need to know in order to mix antiques in a modern home, and that is to mix them. It sounds simple, but the thing that I often hear from people is that I'm bringing antiques into my home. I want to make it look more charming, more full of personality and not so cookie cutter. But then I just feel like I live in my grandma's house. And I have to say that that's probably because you're not mixing antiques and modern items. You're only doing antiques. And vice versa, if you're only doing modern items, then you probably feel like you're lacking a little bit of personality if modern's not your style. So the key is to put both types of furnishings, furniture, decorations, wallpapers, art, all the different things that you bring into a home, mix and match the pieces that are modern and the pieces that are antique. For every modern couch, bring in an antique accent chair. For every modern coffee table, bring in an antique hutch. You really do need to be intentional about how you're mixing these styles, but if you aren't mixing and you're only bringing in one or the other, then it is going to feel maybe out of your style if you like a more modern home without it being like only modern. Now, before we get super far into this video, I want to define what I mean when I say modern, because Modern in the design world is a very specific look, but when I am saying modern in this video, all I'm actually talking about is today's products, readily available, you can find at the drop of a hat, and it can be delivered in a week. That is what I mean when I say modern, not necessarily like everything that's super clean lines or it's all white. I'm just trying to kind of define the items that you can find in today's world. And when I say antique, similarly, I'm not necessarily only talking about antiques, because antiques are defined with a very specific time period of like 100 years or more, or maybe it's 50 years or more. I can't even remember. It's old, okay? But we're also going to talk today about vintage items, 25 years or older, and secondhand or thrifted items. And I'm kind of lumping all three of those things, like an actual genuine antique, a vintage item, and even just secondhand thrifted items into the same term of antique. That's antique, this is modern, and we're gonna combine the two. And the reason that I'm doing that is because I don't want to make it so narrow that you feel like you could never mix and match traditional modern and traditional antiques and have it be your style. We need some flexibility in our home design, because if there's no flexibility, or if we feel like we're really confined to these design rules, then sometimes it can actually paralyze us and leave us feeling like we don't have a step forward to actually accomplish any of these things because we don't fit the mold. And I kind of like to break molds. That's like my favorite thing to do in the design world, because I'm not a traditionally trained interior designer. And so I kind of feel like I have the freedom to be like, who needs that rule? That constrains me too much and I want to break out of it. So let's talk about the first way that I like to bring antiques, vintage, thrifted, secondhand into my home. The first way is through, I almost missed the stairs, collections. Now I started this vintage and antique artwork collection of sketches, etchings, drawings, basically anything that's kind of that like black and white or sepia tone with pencil and ink and no color. So it's a collection of items that fall into that general category. And so far until this year, all of them were either antique, authentic, some are prints, or they were vintage. And then this year I found this gorgeous look-alike at Target. And for a moment I kind of was like, ooh, I don't know if I actually want to add that to my gallery wall of authentic antiques, because I didn't want to cheapen it. And then I thought to myself, well, that's kind of ridiculous. I love the way that this looks. I love the way that the black grounds like everything around it, because I don't have any other artwork that's got a black mat. And I really loved that the frame was kind of like a gold, antiqued gold. And so it looked so good with the rest of my collection, and I decided to go for it. I decided to throw a brand new item into my antique collection. Oh no. Everybody was a little concerned about that, and I love the way that it looks, and I think that that is so important to remember as we create our own homes, is that it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It can be a mix, and that's actually what makes it really interesting. Now I want to talk really specifically about small decor, and I want to try and be as practical as I can, so I'm going to show you like very specifically what I mean by this. Number one, isn't this basket cute? I got this at the Found Cottage when I went antiquing with my YouTube friends who I hosted, which was so fun. And I will pop the video up here if you're interested in seeing a bunch of YouTubers out in the wild. But I love this basket, and the reason that I love it, to be very practical, is because it warms any space up with its beautiful coloring, with the texture, with the story behind it, because you know what, you cannot go out and find this at Home Goods. And it's cute, it's got a lid, it's even got a little fakey handle that somebody made because they needed two handles and one broke off. Like things like this that other people are probably like, oh man, that basket's broken, I'm not gonna buy it. I'm like, give me the basket. So it's just gonna sit there for now, and it can be storage for linens, tablecloths, napkins. We're in a dining room, so that all makes sense, but it can also be storage for like large pots and pans that I can't fit into my cabinets, or literally anything, because there's a lid. Now let's get up close. I built this and I'm really proud of it. This used to be a coat closet on the other side, and we flipped it around, opened this wall up, and I made this coffee station. Anyways, that's all in another video as well. Let's look at the decor, because I want to show you that the amount of mixing of modern and vintage, or antique, remember my definitions, is very, very mixed. And I'm not sure that if you were looking at this, that you would even know that. In fact, I kind of want to like just sit and let you look at it for a minute, and you decide what you think is an antique or a vintage item, and what you think is brand new. Okay, you're gonna just have to pause the video because I'm not just gonna stand here. Now let me go piece by piece. I'm just gonna point and I'm gonna show you what is what. New, 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 antique, 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 new, new, new. Did you think that this was new? You wouldn't know it. Thrifted, antique, new, new, antique, new, antique, thrifted, antique, new, thrifted, vintage probably. Obviously new, right? New. And then you can't see them from this angle. But all of my ironstone is antique, and then my cutting boards are all new. So let's count this. Oh my goodness, it's almost dead even. There's 11 new items and 10 antiques. Don't they look good together? I love this. This is probably my favorite spot in my entire home. And I feel like it just feels extra charming because of that mix. It doesn't look too old, like everything is an antique, even though some of them I purchased literally because they look like a replica of an antique. And I didn't want to have to search for this or pay an antique price for something like this instead of the $6 that I paid. So while I am trying in some instances to find new items that look older for the character and the charm that they bring, other times I am bringing in new pieces that are just kind of interesting. This is brand new, but it looks more handmade. Or greenery, obviously I would like to go new. Baskets are a great way to buy new or old, but I just really love the texture that this one had. And this one here is also another great example of a new item that it would be really hard to find in an older instance. But the black and the way that it's woven makes it look a little bit more modern to tone down all the other old stuff. Modern dishes are a great way to do that because they usually have pretty simple, clean lines, as opposed to an antique plate that would be maybe like a scalloped edge or would have a floral pattern on it or something that is overtly antique. Any kind of ceramics or dishes or pottery that has more of the sleek, clean lines is a great way to bring in some modern items into a grouping that might be kind of heavily leaning vintagey. And then just kind of looking at it from a broader pulled back position, I did the cabinetry in a modern shaker, and I did the shelves, I built them to be chunky, modern looking shelves. So in this instance, the bigger picture of the furniture pieces themselves actually helps tone down any like overtly antique decor so that it doesn't feel too one-sided. And conversely, this is also in my dining room. It is an antique that I refinish. And so having more of a modern look to the cabinetry in the coffee nook paired with a very overt antique makes the whole room kind of come together because I don't have like one antique in the room, or I don't have one modern piece in the room and the rest of it is antique. You have to have a really good mix and balance for it to feel cohesive. I just noticed that the dog crate, what gets more modern than that? Having a big old ugly dog crate right in your living room. This is an example of how you can get the look without actually finding an antique. Modern, very basic, modern. Let's show you closer though. Isn't that pretty? It's just so simple. It literally is out all season long. But then this one as a nod to a more storied and antique look with the block print and with a little bit of fading even on the fabric, even though it's brand new. Brand new, made to look old. Sometimes you can find these replicas and bring them in if you don't have the time to hunt for antiques or you're just not finding exactly what you want. And it does a little bit of the job of mix and matching modern and antique looks without sometimes the antique price. Let's talk about the design of a room real quick. A lot of people don't have the flexibility, ability, budget, desire to actually design and remodel a space. So you're usually just kind of working with what you got, and maybe you're changing out some decor and paint colors and furniture. But if you have the ability to actually design a room, which is usually done in a kitchen or maybe a living space, then keep in mind this theory of mixing modern and antique with my definition, not with interior design definitions. And it'll go a long way to make your new design feel like it's not just a modern cookie cutter home. Can you hear that? It sounds like there's an owl in my fireplace. Now, when I designed this kitchen, I definitely wanted my modern conveniences. I need to hide my coffee maker. Done. I needed a place for a dishwasher. Done. It doesn't mean to incorporate antiques that you don't also have the modern conveniences that you want or need, but it does mean that you can add a few like kind of touches, just little scatter them here and there, like this. This is just a thrifted vintage basket. Who knows how old it is? I don't even know. But you can't buy it brand new, just like this is. And so it is a bit of a one-of-a-kind piece, and it's really cute, just hanging on my peg rack. Got the peg rack for $1 from a yard sale. And it's on my custom hutch that was $1 million more than $1. No, not really. That would be $1 million. We did not invest that much in this kitchen. But one thing that I did do is I wanted a rounded island design, which is a very old look. Most modern kitchens only have square edges on all of the cabinetry. So I wanted to round it. I wanted to give it a little bit more of a storied look. And that's a really simple way for me to ask somebody else to do the hard work of rounding the island. But in the end, it was a design element that I brought in and was able to then say, okay, we have obvious modern elements. We have some more character-filled and storied elements. And then we're gonna supplement everything else with a little bit of antique decorations. This whole section of the kitchen is a pretty good example of that. These are modern, right? Modern salt holders. You can also buy antique salt holders. They just usually don't have lids. And so marble and modern mixed with antique. This doesn't actually hold anything. It's just decor. But this antique is heavy and functional. It's functional and it's an antique. So I'm bringing it in, I'm using it for a real purpose. It's not just a decoration. And yes, you can find utensil holders on Amazon, but why not grab one from the thrift store or a flea market for $4 and bring a character piece in with it? And then similarly, this is another collection I have of antique mortar and pestles. And they're really heavy. So be prepared if you love these, but they were made for a purpose. They matched things in real kitchens centuries ago. And I love them for that like story, for the history of it. And so I have incorporated them into the decorations of my kitchen, as well as serving a little bit of a purpose. Why not fill it with some dried lavender and get some scents coming in here naturally, even though they make a mess. But literally everything on these shelves are either antiques or secondhand items. There's not one new thing Correct. I had to fact check myself. There's not one new thing on these shelves, and so they bring in a lot of charm and uniqueness, because I could fill it with decor from Amazon or from Target, or none of these places are bad to shop from. I shop from them literally all the time. But if I only shopped from those stores, then it would look like any other house in any other city in any other country. Now let me give you one thing that's a huge piece of the puzzle when it comes to mixing antiques or modern pieces, and that is lighting. Now my kitchen's pretty traditional, and so to kind of bring it out of like the only traditional look, I brought in modern lighting, very modern lighting in fact, and the range hood also has flanking modern lighting on that side that kind of corresponds a little bit, even though it's not perfectly matched, which I don't want it to be perfectly matched. But lighting is a really great option for bringing in either a modern piece into a room that's feeling kind of traditional or old, for lack of better antiques words. But conversely, you can also bring antique lighting into a space that's really modern. And pairing that really central focal point of a room in the converse of whatever the room is already styled as will help bring it into a space of balance. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about on this topic actually stems from why my channel name is Grace in My Space, when my name is Sarah. I know, it's very confusing for many people. I didn't name my channel, my brand, Grace in My Space because it had anything to do with my name. I'm looking at home and the curation and creation of home from a lens of grace in everything that I do. And grace means actually multiple different things. You can be graceful, and you can be poised, and you can be elegant, and I love that for my home. But you can also show grace more as like an action word. And that is really where I become passionate about home, is that I want us as a culture, as a society, to start being more grace-filled towards ourselves and towards others when it comes to creating a home. I think our society has just swung so far over to this feeling of lack and less than and imperfection if our homes aren't to the standard of whoever's standard you're looking at, which is honestly just like unattainable. And that is what brings so much discontentment into people's homes. It's not necessarily that they don't have the things that they need or that they don't like what they have. It's that this bar that everybody keeps trying to reach is ever shifting and ever growing higher. And so what I love to share is more along the lines of bringing contentment to our homes, being satisfied with a situation that's not complete right away, like this hutch. I think I've shown you this hutch in every video since I got it. And every video I say, I will be refinishing this hutch, but here I am still showing it, still including it, still loving it in my home, even though it doesn't look like what I want it to look like, because I'm not at a point in life when I can actually take the time to refinish it. And so using pieces that you just don't quite love, but you have a vision for in that kind of in-between stage, I think is really the heart of my channel, and not killing ourselves for perfection or being discontent in our homes because of this perceived lack, and instead just being okay with the journey and the process that it takes to create a home that you love, and also throwing out all of these crazy expectations that we've placed upon ourselves because of worldliness. Worldliness, and that is really all that it comes down to, is the heart behind creating a home. So if you are in this stage in your home where you feel like it's not complete, where you feel like there's pieces missing, where you feel like it's going to take forever for you to hunt for and find the pieces that are really the right fit, that's okay. Actually, that's kind of preferred, because in that time period, that in-between time where you're learning your style and you're learning what will work for your home and what won't, you will actually grow in so many ways, so that when you actually do come across that final piece that you really love and will fit exactly what you need, you'll appreciate it all the more. Thank you. No bite. Good girl. Thanks for watching. I hope that seeing the mixture of antique and modern, my definition of both, in a home is helpful if you're kind of trying to just figure out what might my house be missing, not mixing, but technically. That's probably what it's missing. And if you're looking to actually really hone in on a very specific design style, I'm gonna link up for you a 2-part series on how to define your design style, because I think that it's helpful to have a starting point like that and to say, like, my style is organic modern or my style is modern farmhouse. But I also think even more that it's okay not to define your style to that level of specificity, because it gives you more breathing room to grow as a person and to grow as a designer in your own home, whether you want to be labeled designer or just homemaker. And that way you can kind of just have a little bit more freedom to no bite, good girl. You can have a little bit more freedom in your home to change your mind, because let's be honest, we change our minds every day. So why is it a big deal if you do it in your home? What am I gonna do with this face? She's so cute. I'll see you next week.